It was supposed to be our protagonist's birthday, a day of joy for any prince. But for Hiel, the 17th prince of a powerful kingdom, instead of a celebration, nobles gathered at the palace to witness his exile. On his 15th birthday, his father, the emperor, gave him a dominion far away in a barren land. Hiel had no choice but to obey. Without a word of comfort, his father sent him straight into the ocean. After 15 days of seasickness, Hiel finally saw his new home, Shiol Reef. It was nothing more than a few sharp rocks rising out of the sea. It was an area so dangerous that even pirates avoided it. The ship dropped him off in a small boat and left without checking if he could even make it to the reef. So much for being royalty. Hiel's siblings didn't even care. They saw him as a failure and claimed the Shiol Reef was perfect for someone like him. Each of them had powerful magical marks called crests, like the crest of the sword god or the crest of the king of magic. On the other hand, Hiel's crest was weak and unknown. No matter how hard he trained, he couldn't match his siblings. Since childhood, he had worked hard to earn respect, but nothing changed. In one last plea, he asked his father for a place where he could at least survive. But the emperor said this exile was the will of the gods. Now, left with only a small bag of supplies, Hiel wondered if being executed would have been a kinder fate. As he got closer to the reef, he found no beach to land on. Instead, he spotted a narrow crack between the rocks. Violent waves pushed his boat closer to danger. He tried to use wind magic to slow down, but he couldn't even summon a breeze. Somehow he made it, dragging his things onto the rocky ground. Ahead of him was a dark cave. He went in hoping to store his supplies safely. But what he saw made broke into cold sweat. Inside were piles of skeletons of both humans and monsters. Hiel froze. Maybe they were people like him, exiled and left to die. If none of them survived, what chance did he have? Still, he brought his things inside and sat on a chest, staring out at the sea. It was both scary and beautiful, unlike the cruel world he had lived in, which was only scary. He slapped his cheeks and told himself he had to survive, no matter what. Escape was nearly impossible. His only hope was to be picked up by a pirate ship or a foreign one. Either way, he would probably be sold as a slave. His food and water would last about a month. Without magic, he would have to collect rainwater and catch fish to survive. First, he needed to clean the area and bury the bones. He opened his toolbox and pulled out a pickaxe. As soon as he held it, a strange voice echoed in the air. Acquired mining tool. He looked around in a panic, trying to figure out where the voice had come from. Then it spoke again, this time directly in his head. The voice said he had gained a mining tool and asked if he wanted to start mining. Shocked, he asked who was speaking. The voice explained that it was the advisor function of his crest, the Cave King crest. Hiel's crest had been quiet since he was born. Then it finally made sense to him. He was living in the royal palace this whole time, away from caves. But now that he was in one, it activated. The advisor said the crest didn't just make him better at mining, it also helped him level up while inside caves by doing cave-related tasks. Overwhelmed by all this new information, Hiel suddenly felt like mining was his true purpose. As soon as he decided to give it a try, the advisor suddenly optimized his mining capabilities. Because of this, large areas of dirt in front of him started to glow. These glowing spots showed the best places to mine. They were not only easy to break, but also safe, so the cave wouldn't collapse. To test it, Hiel gently struck the dirt, and the tool easily broke through a huge section. He also noticed how he could see clearly. One of the support features of his crest was night vision, which let him see clearly in the dark. He decided to carve out a small room to sleep in and continue mining with this new goal in mind. He also realized how fun it was. As he kept digging, his tiredness turned into excitement. The small room he had planned became a giant cave. At the same time, each swing of his tool dug out more as his mining skill rank increased. Later, the advisor asked if he wanted to collect the 168 stones he had already mined. Curious about where the rocks would go, Hiel learned that his crest could store everything he mined. The rubble around him made it hard to move. This forced him to collect the stones, which disappeared into his inventory, almost like magic. When the advisor asked if he wanted to make this automatic, Hiel agreed right away. He started to worry that he had already dug too far, but the advisor told him he was only 10 meters below where he started. Hiel didn't really know how far a meter was, but he could learn it later. After working for a while, he took a break and checked his inventory. It was full of ores: iron, copper, bronze, and even gold. But the most surprising items were the 15 magic crystals. Each one could increase his magic power depending on its size. Although Hiel was thankful for finally finding a solution after all these years, his curiosity soon took over to another ore. The next strange discovery he found was something called turtle stones. Each stone could increase his lifespan by 1 day. It was because of his mysterious crest that he had made these discoveries. He also began to see the Shiol Reef differently. This place, once feared, now felt like his own territory. With new energy, he started digging even deeper into the cave, completely forgetting his plan to escape. By the time he reached a depth of 30 meters, his inventory was full of different stones. Some were gems, others were turtle-shaped. Giving in to his curiosity, Hiel wondered how powerful he could become if he used advanced magic. With that hope in mind, he decided to use all 90 of his magic crystals on himself. Despite how amazing it sounded, nothing special happened. He didn't feel different, nor did he gain any new form or power. Feeling a bit embarrassed, Hiel quietly confirmed with the advisor that he had indeed used all of them. To test it out, he tried to clean up the piles of dirt he had dug through earlier. He raised his hand to use wind magic. The moment he did, a huge blast of wind roared. It was so strong that it blew away all the rubble, bones, and dirt like a storm. Everything flew out of the cave. Hiel stood frozen, his hands shaking from the surprise of using such powerful wind magic. He felt bad for disturbing the dead, but he couldn't believe that just 90 magic stones had given him so much power. Suddenly, he sensed something behind him. When he turned around, something jumped straight at his face. He fell to the ground, and a jelly-like creature wobbled on his chest. 3 days had passed since Hiel was sent to the Shiol Reef. Before starting another day of work, Hiel checked his tools, his food, and his new companion, Shell. He didn't know what kind of creature Shell was at first. It had followed him around ever since he found it, bouncing happily. Eventually, Hiel realized it was a slime, his very first friend in this lonely place. Mr. Advisor suggested taming the small creature. Although Hiel had read about taming before, he had never tried it. In his kingdom, monsters were hated, and people were not allowed to keep them alive. The taming skill only worked on friendly monsters, but there had never been any around for him to try it on. Now that no one was around to stop or judge him, Hiel decided to give taming a try. To do that, he needed to give the slime a name. After thinking hard, he named it Shell, since it reminded him of the Shiol Reef. Even though Shell didn't understand him, having someone nearby made Hiel feel less lonely. But Shell turned out to be more useful than he expected. It could stretch and help Hiel reach places he couldn't on his own. Using hand signals, Hiel could ask Shell to move things, or even carry him around. Thanks to Shell, Hiel started making more discoveries. In just 3 days, he had found 3 times more ore than before. He used about 500 magic stones to shock fish for food and to create clean water. At night, Shell became the best pillow, cool and soft, so Hiel didn't even have to flip it over. While mining, Hiel found 10 more slimes, but none of them were as smart as Shell. The next morning, Hiel woke up to Shell shaking him. Shell had changed shape and pointed toward something. Hiel followed its gaze and saw a crashed boat down by the rocks. Riding on Shell, he rushed over and found something surprising. Lying on the ground, badly hurt and bleeding, were a small girl, a bulked-up man, and an old one in robes. All of them had green skin. They were goblins, monsters humans were supposed to kill on sight. But Hiel no longer followed those rules. He saw they were still alive and chose to help them. He cast a healing spell and carried each of them up to the cave one at a time. The strong one was the hardest to move, so he saved him for last. Inside the cave, he did his best to treat their injuries and asked Shell to alert him if anything changed. Though he was nervous about being attacked, he hoped his magic could protect him. Trying to calm his nerves, Hiel picked up his pickaxe and returned to mining. With every strike of the tool, he felt more at peace. The steady sound helped him forget his worries. Later, while checking his inventory, Hiel found 2 new stones. One was a glowing, shining stone that gave off endless light, but it was useless to him since he could already see in the dark. The other was a Masoji stone, which could lift curses. Before he could continue digging, Shell came bouncing down to the cave, letting him know that the goblins had woken up. Hiel rode on Shell's back as they returned to the goblins. As they got closer, he overheard the goblins talking to each other. One of them, who seemed to be a general, was searching through their supplies. The little girl, who was actually a princess, begged him not to do anything. The general, sensing Hiel's presence behind them, quickly warned the others. They hid behind him as he raised his blade, expecting the worst. The princess, clearly upset, begged him to lower the weapon, but the general believed that Hiel was not a savior, but someone dangerous. When Hiel heard them speaking the same language as him, he was surprised. They were from the same continent. Still, he quickly focused and tried to calm them, saying he meant no harm. But their fear only grew. Hiel noticed that they weren't acting like enemies. Instead, they seemed scared of him. Then the general, suspicious, asked why Hiel was smiling in a strange way if he truly meant no harm. Confused, Hiel turned to Shell, who suddenly became a mirror. He glanced at his reflection and finally understood. His image alone looked scary enough to make someone like John Wick run away. He got engrossed in mining that his smile got stuck. Trying to show kindness, Hiel invited them to eat. He even used his magic to zap a few fish out of the water and offered them to share the meal. But instead of being comforted, they were terrified of his magic. The general, overwhelmed, told him to just end their lives if that was what he intended. Suddenly, the princess dropped to her knees, clutching her chest in pain. The others rushed to her side. She started shaking and Hiel, concerned, asked if she had truly recovered. Sadly, the old man with them admitted that she hadn't. She was cursed, one that slowly drained her life. Hiel was shocked. She was just a child. Even the strong and fierce-looking general began to cry. Feeling helpless, they decided they would rather die with the princess than leave her alone. But then Hiel remembered something, the mockery stone he carried. He begged them to wait, saying he might be able to cure her. They didn't believe him. They had already tried everything. Even Hiel wasn't sure it would work, but he wanted to try. As he used the stone, her body began to glow. Because her life had been shortened, he also used 79 out of his 89 turtle stones. When they asked what he had done, he explained that the mockery stone had the power to remove any curse. Then, to everyone's shock, the princess had gotten better and asked what just happened. She had returned from the edge of death. The general, overwhelmed with guilt, slammed his head on the ground to beg for forgiveness. The other two knelt as well. Hiel, who had gone back to roasting fish by the fire, told them to eat with him and to introduce themselves properly. The general of the Belden goblin tribe introduced himself as Princess Reef. The daughter of the tribe's king greeted Hiel. An old man in robes also stepped forward and introduced himself as Vari, a goblin shaman. In return, Hiel told them his name and said he was once a prince from the kingdom of Sandfales. Thought that Hiel's strong magic came from his royal blood, but Hiel politely said it wasn't. He explained that his power came from special stones he had found underground. When Hiel asked why they looked so sad despite their high status, their expressions changed. Explained that their hometown had been destroyed by orcs. Almost the entire royal family were killed, and only Reef had survived the attack. The rest of the goblin clans had turned their backs on them, and they couldn't go to the humans either since humans hated goblins. In the end, they had no choice but to run away. The three of them escaped on a small boat with others, which later crashed on a reef. Reef thanked Hiel for showing kindness to monsters like them. Even though she had faced so much pain and hate, she said she felt at peace now. With the 79 turtle stones she had gained 79 more days to live. Though her life would still be short, she was thankful that she could die without fear. The others were grateful too. But for Hiel, it wasn't the end. He told them about the turtle stones. If they dug for a week, they could find enough stones to gain a whole year of life for Reef. The two older goblins were amazed. After a short pause, they asked if they could help dig too. Hiel agreed right away. Then Princess Reef shyly asked why Hiel was willing to give them such valuable stones. Hiel gave her a calm look and said he was just thankful to have met them. He also said that mining was something he truly enjoyed. Tears filled Reef's eyes and she began to shake as she thanked him with all her heart. Still, Hiel had some concerns. He was worried they might get hurt since they didn't have powers like him. But then, the advisor explained something. If Hiel tamed them, he could share some of his powers with them. They would gain better mining skills, the ability to earn experience, and could even dig more safely and efficiently. The general looked a little uneasy when he heard about them being tamed, but Hiel calmly explained that it was only meant to help them dig. He said they were free to say no, and that he would still give them the stones either way. Vari and nervously tried to explain that they were more than happy to serve him, but they asked him to spare their princess. To their complete surprise, the princess stepped forward and offered to be tamed herself. She said she wanted to repay her debt by helping in any way she could. She even asked Hiel to give her a new name. After the taming, their names changed. General became Elven. The shaman, Vari, was now called the Varus, and Princess Reef was renamed to Raina. Once they were underground, Hiel pulled out a glowing stone from his inventory, since the others didn't have night vision like he did. Everyone was amazed at how he had summoned the stone from nowhere. He promised to explain it while they worked. As they dug deeper, their upgraded mining skill kicked in and started highlighting shiny spots in the walls. Hiel began to explain why, but then stopped and decided to show them instead. When his pickaxe struck the cave wall, loud tremors shook the ground. Cracks formed and a cloud of dust filled the air. When the dust settled, they were stunned to see a massive hole had opened up ahead. Hiel told them that he wasn't always this strong, but they could reach this level too someday. He also noticed they didn't have an inventory like his, so he told Shell to call the other nearby slimes for help. From that day on, the cave became much livelier. The scene shifted to a memory from the past, one that showed Hiel lying on the ground trying to protect a small chained creature. Both of them were beaten and weak. 6 of his siblings stood in front of them, laughing. One of them raised a hand and formed a fireball, ready to burn them both to ashes. Hiel's face showed no hope. As he stared at the small vial hanging from his necklace, he drifted deeper into his thoughts. Then he heard Raina calling his name, pulling him back to the present. She stood nearby looking worried. Elven also told him to take a break after the long day. Hiel held the vial tightly and said sorry. He explained that because of his Cave King crest, he could dig all day without getting tired. Even though that's what he claimed, he soon noticed a delicious smell in the air. Raina said they were having apple pie. The others smiled, excited for the treat. It had been 6 days since Hiel arrived at the cave, and 3 days since he met the goblins. In that short time, they had worked together to build a bathroom, a small place to bathe, and a simple kitchen for Raina. Raina kept watching Hiel nervously as he took a piece of pie, but then he started choking and she panicked, until she saw him shivering from how good it tasted. Using the items and ingredients he had brought, Raina would often cook something special. Elvin had gotten used to these little joys of mining, and even Varys didn't complain. After all, they were also helping extend the princess's life. With a warm smile, Raina thanked everyone for their effort. Meanwhile, Hiel thought to himself, things were getting better, but many problems remained. He lacked enough supplies. For firewood, he could use the lumber he brought or pieces of driftwood that washed in. For food, they only had fish. Their clothes were also wearing out. He considered using his gems to buy supplies from any ship that passed nearby. His thoughts drifted again to how he had told Elvin to stop overworking himself just today. It almost felt like he was starting to think like a real lord. While searching for turtle stones, Hiel struck the ground. This time, a large piece of the rocky surface collapsed, revealing a hollow cave just big enough for him to enter. As he stepped inside, he saw that the walls were covered with stones that gave off a dull orange glow. They looked like the shining stone he had, but not quite the same. As he walked deeper, he noticed the ground felt much softer than the one outside. He wondered what kind of soil it was. Then he looked up and froze. Hanging from the ceiling above him was a huge black spider with a strange shape. His eyes widened in fear. He thought the creature would attack and eat him, but instead, the spider gently landed and quickly moved deeper into the cave. Curious, Hiel followed it and soon saw that the spider was a mother. She was only trying to protect her young ones from someone she didn't know. After Hiel apologized, Mr. Advisor saw that the spiders were not aggressive and asked if Hiel wanted to tame them. Meanwhile, near the cave's entrance, the others were starting to worry about Hiel's long absence. Elvin heard footsteps behind him and asked if Hiel finally changed his mind. From the cave came Hiel, followed by a group of large, scary-looking cave spiders. A frightened general backed up against the wall, forgetting that he was supposed to protect the princess. Hiel calmly explained that the mother spider named Mama Terran and her children had joined them. Varys was shocked at Mama Terran's size. He explained that cave spiders back in their land were much smaller. They were known for their strong silk, stronger than iron, but also for their habit of eating both humans and monsters without care. However, the spiders here seemed friendly. The little ones played with slimes and rocks while their mother carried a small shell on her back. Varys then explained that the soft ground Hiel had felt earlier was actually spider droppings. As strange as it sounded, it was an excellent fertilizer for farming. When the group wondered where they could grow crops, Hiel offered to show them something. He led them to the cave he had come from earlier. Inside, they were surprised to see a carefully carved staircase going down, lit by the glowing stones. Hiel proudly explained that he had widened the narrow path on his way back, thanks to an upgrade to his crest, now ranked Cave King Level 2. Hiel had gained new skills. One was the design skill, which let him reshape whatever he mined. He could also process and combine things like rock and sand from his inventory to make gravel, using the workshop skill. Even better, he could now use his workshop and access his inventory outside the cave. Lastly, he gained the ability to give night vision to his tamed monsters. With all these new skills and discoveries, the group knew they had a lot of work ahead. The next day, the sound of metal hitting metal filled the air. The three men worked hard to make iron tools. Varys planned the designs, Hiel handled the ores, and Elvin put the tools together. At the same time, Raina started knitting clothes, towels, and other things using spider silk. Hiel often visited the spiders, who were now in charge of farming with the tools he gave them. Surprisingly, one of Terran's kids showed an unexpected talent. With several pickaxes, the child mined so well that it reminded Hiel not to be beaten as the Cave King. When they planted a leftover apple seed in the spider-made soil, a full apple tree grew within minutes. It was heavy with red fruit. The orange stones Hiel had seen earlier turned out to be sunstones, which helped living things grow faster, like Terran. Hiel searched for more but only found 678, so he left their care and the farm planning to Ray. He worried she might push herself too hard, but he trusted her because she always gave her best. Riding on Shell, Hiel slid down the staircase slide he built and continued mining with the spiders. He felt calm and focused, with a new goal in mind. Even though Princess Raina looked small, she was actually 15, just like Hiel. She had gained 5 more years of life, but he knew she wanted to live longer. Since he was the best at mining, Hiel kept searching for more turtle stones. During one dig, he found a strange white stone and put it aside. As soon as it went into his inventory, Mr. Advisor identified it. It was a dragon orb, a rare item that could bring the dead back to life. Shocked by the discovery, Hiel told everyone to dig more in that area, but even with help from the tiny furballs, they couldn't find another one. He quickly returned the orb to the outside world, worried that if he died, no one could recover or use it. Just then, Elvin's voice called from above, sounding urgent. Hiel didn't wait for details. He rushed up the stairs and safely placed the dragon orb on a ledge. But as he ran, the orb rolled away and landed on the skull of one of the nearby skeletons. By the time Hiel reached the surface, Elvin's voice had grown desperate. Out at sea, their tribe's ship was struggling against huge waves. Despite the wild waves, the ship stayed upright. Tears filled the goblins' eyes. Their friends, including Elvin's daughter, were still alive. Since docking the large ship could cause problems, Hiel suggested that Elvin use his boat to reach them instead. At the same time, Hiel brought out a heavy pouch full of gems and other valuables. He offered it as a farewell gift, something the tribe could use to start a new life wherever they chose to settle. Elvin was confused by Hiel's sudden offer. Sensing this, Hiel explained that since their friends had finally arrived, it was the perfect chance to leave this dangerous place. He also seemed excited at the thought of being able to trade with them in the future and maybe get some useful items. A moment of silence passed. Raina and Varys looked uncomfortable and sad while Elvin quietly trembled behind them. He was in pain. With a shaky voice, he begged Hiel not to abandon them. His words struck Hiel deeply. Even though they weren't his tamed monsters, they had still sworn loyalty to him and would convince the others to do the same. Raina and Varys quickly agreed. They said with pride that as his followers, they should stay with their leader. Hiel, caught off guard, admitted that he was grateful, but reminded them that an opportunity like this might never come again. Raina, who understood what this meant, asked in a soft voice if Hiel would go with them. Hiel couldn't answer. As he looked back at the reef, he remembered his original plan to leave, but now he couldn't bring himself to go. Understanding his silence, Raina made a firm decision. If Hiel wouldn't go, then neither would they. Elvin gave him a grin and Varys smiled too, saying they felt the same way. Just as Hiel was getting caught up in the emotion of the moment, he noticed something wrong. The ship, which was trying to float upright a while ago, was now tipped over. Elvin quickly noticed their people had been thrown into the sea and were now struggling to stay above water. Raina ran to Hiel's boat to try and rescue them, and Elvin and Varys quickly followed, but Hiel could see they wouldn't make it in time. A heavy feeling from his past returned, the same helplessness he felt when he failed to save a small creature, crushed by his own siblings. As Raina watched in shock, Hiel didn't hesitate. He jumped off the cliff, heading straight toward the jagged rocks below. He pushed away all doubts in his mind and ran toward the drowning goblins. As the Cave King, he was determined to stay strong. He used all 8,879 of his magic stones and cast a giant freezing spell on the water just before he reached it. Raina and the others watched as the wild waves turned to solid ice, strong enough to hold up the sinking ship. Even Hiel was surprised by the spell's power, but he quickly focused again and told Elvin to cross the ice instead of using the boat. With a loud cry, Elvin jumped off the cliff, but the moment he landed, he slipped into because the ice was too slick. Hiel blamed himself for not thinking ahead, but Taryn quickly grabbed Hiel and carried him on her back. Her strong legs helped her stick to the ice path. The little ones followed her closely, stepping in her tracks. They helped Elvin up, and he said sorry for judging them unfairly before. Shell and the other slimes rushed over, and at Hiel's command they changed shape. They turned into floating blocks that the goblins could climb on or hold tight to. Meanwhile, Taryn and her children shot webs for them to grab. Hiel kept freezing the waves again and again as they came crashing in. After several hours of hard work, though some got a bit hurt, all the goblins safely made it to shore. A happy little Raina ran up to thank Hiel for saving all 205 of their goblin friends. Before he could answer, a louder cry interrupted them. Elvin was crying with joy because his daughter was safe. Fu begged him to stop embarrassing her. Hiel and the others could tell that their general was truly happy, even though he had once left his own daughter behind to protect the princess. The princess thanked Hiel for everything he had done. Hiel stayed quiet for a moment before saying he hadn't done it alone. Taryn, her children, and even the slimes helped make it possible. With a small smile, Hiel thanked them for staying with him. Varys gave a small bow and thanked Hiel for being kinder than any humans they had known. But then he suddenly stopped and asked about the person behind Hiel, someone who had been following him. Hiel, also curious, turned around and saw something strange. There stood a short person with no clothes, arms crossed, just staring. Hiel, confused, asked if he was from their ship. If the man had been on the island this whole time, his lack of clothes would have been hard to miss. Hiel introduced himself and asked who he was, but the man said nothing. Instead, the stranger walked over to the temporary camp and started eating the fish that was being cooked, showing that he was hungry. He didn't speak at all. Ignoring the mystery for now, Hiel decided to get him dressed. The next day, Hiel's pickaxe struck a sharp-edged stone. With 205 new residents, he prepared 41 rooms, each one for 5 goblins. The island became even more active when Hiel managed to tame them all, but the hardest part for him was giving names to every single one. Since their ship was badly damaged, they couldn't recover many supplies. This made it even more important for them to work hard to produce their own daily needs, which were still in short supply. That afternoon, Raina came to Hiel carrying a special cup on a tray. She thanked him for all his hard work and asked him to try what she had made. Hiel quickly took a sip, drawn in by the familiar smell and color. It was grape juice. With a small laugh, Raina explained that she had been lucky to find a few rotten grapes from the ship. From those, she took the seeds and used sunstones to grow a healthy grape tree. Even though the vineyard was still small, she was sure it would grow well in the coming years. Hiel was shocked when she mentioned years and praised her for thinking ahead. Her face turned red and she promised to do her best to help him. Just then, a loud commotion pulled Hiel away. A goblin blacksmith was shouting at the quiet dwarf who had only been watching his work. To Hiel's surprise, the others were calling the strange, naked dwarf Mappa. Mappa moved closer to the blacksmith's forge, looked at the metalwork, and threw it aside with a sigh. Angry, the blacksmith shoved his hammer into Mappa's hands and dared him to make something better. The moment Mappa grabbed the hammer, his eyes lit up with focus. He stepped to the workbench. When he raised the hammer, it began to glow with a pale light. His muscles grew and he started hitting the iron with great force. His strikes were not just strong, they were also fast and very accurate. After cooling and heating the iron several times, Mappa created a pickaxe head that looked like a piece of art. But tools like pickaxes needed to be tough, not just good looking. To test it, Hiel went down to the deepest level where he had mined before. As he used the pickaxe against the stone wall, all his doubts disappeared. It worked better compared to the usual ones. Hiel praised the tool and Mappa gave a thumbs up. But then Hiel noticed something was wrong. The dragon orb he had placed earlier on a nearby rock was missing. Looking around, he saw that the boulder nearby was actually a mound that looked like a grave. Its shape and size felt oddly familiar. He realized that what he had failed to see in the shadows before were actually Mappa's old remains. After the dragon orb was combined, a legendary blacksmith came back to life. Hiel didn't feel sad about losing the orb. Instead, he felt relieved because it helped him gain a new comrade. With better tools, the first thing they did was build a proper coast outside. After that, they started fixing the goblins' broken ship. Mining became their top priority. During that time, Hiel found a few more friendly slimes. After taming them, they became very helpful, especially in carrying things around. Everything seemed peaceful at first, but soon they noticed that the number of turtle stones they found started to go down. When Hiel realized this, he remembered Raina's smile, the one she gave while pretending everything was fine when it really wasn't. That memory hurt him deeply. So far, they had only managed to extend her life by 10 years. Hiel believed she wanted to live longer, but the truth was, it was him who wanted her to stay. He wanted them to live on the reef together for many more years and see it grow. As he thought about all this, his work led him to uncover a hidden cave. Beyond that hole was a large room. The walls were filled with detailed carvings, and in the middle stood a grand pedestal. It didn't seem like a forgotten place anymore. Hiel started to believe that a lost civilization might have once lived there. On top of the pedestal rested a strange golden oval-shaped object. Planning to collect it, Hiel picked it up. His first find was a heartstone, an item that could act as an artificial core for a doll he could build by combining materials in his inventory. The second item, a golden egg, was identified by Mr. Advisor as a change stone. This item could evolve a monster into a completely different species. Even though it kept the monster's age and personality, the idea of it changing so much made Hiel feel uneasy. While sitting around a bonfire near the crashing waves, Hiel told the others about the change stone. As he spoke, Mappa helped himself to the fish. When asked, Varys explained that all goblins had heard of the change stone through old legends. He added that hobgoblins and leaf goblins were once regular goblins too. Some had evolved into hobgoblins in their search for strength, while others who chose to live deep in the forest became leaf goblins. This was all thanks to the change stone. Because of this, Hiel finally understood a little about evolution. He then asked if Elven was also a hobgoblin. Elven said no, and Varys explained that Elven was born with his strong body. After that, he walked off, wondering what the child of an elf might have looked like. When Varys saw the legendary stone, he was shocked. Hiel then shared what his crest had told him, that the stone would not only evolve a monster, but would also renew its lifespan. The group was amazed. When Hiel asked if they wanted to try it, Varys kindly said he was curious but didn't want to change his body. Elven said he liked his muscles too much to lose them. Raina didn't say anything at first. Then she quietly said she wanted to help Hiel in any way she could, even with just a little magic. But she felt too shy to ask for something so valuable. Varys supported her idea, saying goblins couldn't use magic at all. Hiel agreed, adding that evolving would not only help her use magic but also let her live longer. After hearing that, Raina confidently said she wanted to evolve. Hiel gave her the change stone. Holding it tightly, Raina made a strong wish from the bottom of her heart, to stay by Mr. Hiel's side for a long time. The stone began to shine brightly. The light was so strong that everyone had to cover their eyes. When the glow faded, they looked at her in awe. Raina had changed into a beautiful elf-like beauty. Even Raina was confused by her new body, but Mappa was so shocked by her appearance that his nose started to bleed. A few hours later, Hiel slowly woke up and recalled how Raina evolved just now. As he opened his eyes wide, he saw Raina looking down at him. His eyes widened when he realized he had been sleeping on her lap the whole time. Embarrassed, he quickly jumped away. Raina calmly told him that he had collapsed out of nowhere. He remembered how Mappa's strong nosebleed had knocked him out and was shocked to learn he had been asleep for about 6 hours. It was still dark outside. He asked Raina if she was feeling okay since her appearance had changed and now looked more human. With a soft voice, Raina admitted she didn't like how she used to look. She said she had been cursed from birth, which made her grow slowly and shortened her life. As a princess, people often mocked her because her sisters were much more beautiful. At first, her parents tried to help, but eventually gave up and began avoiding her. Because of all this, when she used the transformation stone, her small wish to become beautiful influenced the change. She apologized for using such a valuable treasure for something that felt selfish. But Hiel could tell that ever since he arrived on the island, something had changed in both of them. He didn't mind her personal wish. He was just glad she had a new life to look forward to. He felt it would have been a waste if her body hadn't changed the way she wanted. Raina, wanting to thank him, offered everything she had in return. As she held his hand tightly, he felt nervous and jumped a little when he noticed that Mappa and Shell had been quietly watching them the whole time. Using the webs from Terran and the others, she wove a new set of clothes for herself. Many of the goblins were surprised by how different she looked, but her beauty still left them in awe. At first, they couldn't believe it was really her. However, when they saw her working hard like she used to, they slowly recognized the person they had known. Now able to use magic, she devoted herself to learning it from Hiel and Varys. She also trained in martial arts under Elvin, but that wasn't all. Raina was finally able to help with the chores and farm work she couldn't do before. While watching her for a moment, he flinched when Varys suddenly appeared behind him. Embarrassed, he tried to explain that he wasn't looking at her legs even though he clearly was. Varys, however, pointed out that her crest of the farmer was located there. Back when Hiel had put Raina in charge of the plantations, he had made a wise choice without knowing it. Her crest helped the crops grow well. He was surprised to learn that even goblins had crests. Up to that point, he thought only humans could use such powers. At that moment, Varys showed his own crest, the crest of the Sorcery King on his palm. It was rare and strong, one that only one of Hiel's brothers had ever possessed. Sadly, Varys couldn't use magic simply because he was a goblin who had no magic power. Hiel felt bad hearing this, but Varys explained that, even with this limitation, he was still lucky to study magic and become a shaman. Before Hiel could offer to help him, Varys kindly asked that they stop the conversation for now and focus on the task at hand. The day before, Varys had shared a plan to take land back from the sea to make the island bigger. They needed more space to grow food, and they also thought it would be nice to have a larger area where the children could play. Varys asked Hiel to just give him the raw materials instead of pushing himself too hard, especially since Hiel had already gathered a lot. But Hiel wanted to try something while he still could. He said that if he failed, Varys could take over. Now that Hiel could finally use his workshop skill outside the cave, he had an idea. First, he combined stone and sand to make gravel. Then he processed it into rough blocks, shaping them into usable rocks. He used a good amount of magic stones to control the rocks and put them where they were needed. He used water magic to create water, then mixed it with spider dirt to make a cement-like paste. This paste helped the rocks stick together. The goblins were shocked to see such magic, but the others were already used to things that didn't follow normal rules. In the end, a flat and wide piece of land was made. The children ran to the beach, happy and excited. Hiel felt pure joy when he saw their innocent smiles. Raina arrived and said she would work hard to grow lots of crops in the new field. But just as Hiel turned to look at her, a giant bird flew down toward the open area and swallowed Mappa whole. Everyone froze in fear when they saw the giant killer birds flying toward them. Hiel quickly told everyone to run back into the cave. As they moved, Elvin's daughter, Fu, noticed a child trip and fall. She rushed to help him, but suddenly Raina screamed in panic. One of the killer birds was charging toward them. In the very next moment, the bird's head was gone. Hiel saw the strong hand holding the weapon and knew right away. It was Elvin, the goblin general and Fu's father. Angry that the birds had gone after his daughter, Elvin attacked them without mercy, cutting them down one after another. Hiel stood in awe at Elvin's strength, but he quickly snapped out of it and joined the fight. Just then, someone yelled, "Shield!" Hiel turned and saw that Raina had created a magic shield behind them, protecting their backs from another bird. She told them to keep fighting while she defended them. The three worked together. Raina guarded them, while Elvin and Hiel attacked. Soon, they found a rhythm, defending and attacking in turns. From above, Varys shouted that everyone else had made it safely into the cave. He told them to hurry back too. Elvin agreed and offered to cover their retreat, But Hiel refused to leave Elven behind. He took out a hearthstone from his inventory and summoned 300 rocks to make dolls. As the birds came again, a pair of giant hands rose up from the ground. Hiel had used the rocks to build a massive golem, and it grabbed the birds. Meanwhile, one of the birds had tried to swallow Ma but couldn't handle the awful taste and threw him up. Shell rushed forward and caught Ma just in time. With the worst part over, Hiel asked Elven if he could gather the rest of the birds in one place. Elven agreed. He threw his axe, which had a rope tied to it. While holding the rope with his arm, he used it to spin and trap the birds. The rope was made from spider silk, so the birds couldn't break free. Seeing a chance to finish the fight, Hiel told everyone to get down. When they did, he released a powerful blizzard spell. It instantly froze the birds solid. Loud screeches filled the air as the few remaining birds fled. Seeing the killer birds leave, victory was theirs. The goblins cheered and celebrated. Even though Elven was covered in blood, he laughed and praised Hiel's power with pride. Raina was really worried about his safety, so she ran to him, but suddenly her legs gave out. Her body shook as she realized how scared she had been. Still, with a calm look, she said that being beside Hiel made her feel safe. Hiel showed her that his legs were shaking too. The two of them laughed together. Soon the rest of their tribe came over and cheered. It wasn't much, but Hiel had finally found people who accepted him. For the first time, he felt that even someone like him could become a real feudal lord. One thing was certain though, roasted killer bird meat was on the menu that day. The bodies of the killer birds were carefully cut into large pieces after being skinned. Their feathers became popular among the children, while the smell of the meat, fried, roasted, and boiled for stew, spread across the island. Everyone raised a toast to their leader, Hiel, and joined the big feast. Well, everyone except the golem. It had been many days since they last ate real meat, so this felt like a celebration. For Hiel, this feast was unlike anything he had experienced, even compared to his royal life. When Raina handed him a full plate, he gratefully accepted it. As soon as he took his first bite, he was lost in the rich, tasty flavor. Happy that he enjoyed her cooking, Raina also gave him a bowl of soup. The soup was delicious too, but Hiel noticed something different about the meat's taste. Raina explained that each part of the killer bird had a different flavor. The wings and legs tasted like chicken, the breast tasted like beef, and the shoulders tasted like pork. Even though more attacks from these birds could be dangerous, they now saw them as a good food source. Varys came over and suggested that they have the golems stand outside the cave, since the killer birds didn't attack creatures larger than themselves. He also suggested building strong watchtowers and walls to protect their crops from salt damage. Hiel agreed but asked if he could be the one to process the rocks they needed. Just then, Hiel heard someone chewing loudly behind him. It was Elven's daughter Fu, who was munching on a rib and staring at him. She suddenly began hopping around as if studying him. Hiel knew who she was but couldn't remember her name. Realizing this, she reminded him that her name was Ful, the name he had given her. He apologized for forgetting and asked if she wanted something. With a serious face, Ful asked why he was so strong. When Hiel said it was because of the magic power stones he found while mining, she became excited and wanted to dig for some herself. Raina gently reminded her that she needed to evolve first before she could use magic. Still, Fula said she was ready to evolve. Hiel apologized again, explaining he didn't have any more change stones at the moment. Her father, Elven, showed up and told her to stop bothering Hiel. He apologized, saying Fula just wanted to become stronger. Fula explained she couldn't help it. Having such a strong father made her want to grow too. Elven felt happy hearing his daughter admire him. Hiel told her that if she ever found a change stone, she could use it. Fula got excited and ran off, saying she would help because she was good at mining. Her father confirmed this with Hiel. Fu then asked the stuffed creature Mappa to make her a pickaxe like Hiel's. Out of the 1,800 magic stones Hiel had, he used 800 on Raina. She felt a sudden change and asked him about it. Hiel explained that he had increased her magic power. Although surprised, Raina promised to make the most of his gift. Elven came back with another large plate of food, urging them to eat more and grow stronger. That day, they finished reclaiming the entire land and celebrated like never before. It became known as the first Memorial Day in Shiol Reef. The next day, Hiel sneezed loudly. Raina had built an underground freezer to store leftover meat, and it had made the air colder than usual. She had used all of her increased magic power to build it. With the steel doors shut tight, the frozen meat would hopefully last for over half a year. Of course, Mappa was the one who made the large steel door. Surprisingly, he also designed the inside of the storage room. But that wasn't the only thing the dwarf worked on. Mappa also planned and fixed up the entire forge, making it better than ever. Now that Raina could finally use magic, she started to rely less on others. Under the guidance of Varys and Elven, she grew more skilled. Their team also continued to build strong walls along the coast, which let Hiel return to mining without any worries. Fula was shocked to hear that there had been no cave-ins or accidents so far. Hiel couldn't explain it well, but he believed it was because of his crest of the Cave King. No one could believe it since Hiel had no mining experience and barely knew what he was doing. Fuel also noticed the area needed better airflow and cleaner surroundings. Dust was building up and it could be dangerous to breathe in. Worse, certain gases could be poisonous or even explode. Hiel got scared but also amazed by Fula's knowledge about mining. She said she had been interested in mines since she was young and her crest of the miner. Though not as rare as his, it was still very useful. Hiel was happy to have someone he could trust and learn from. Even though Ful didn't have a magic advisor or automatic tools, she made up for it with skill and instincts. She couldn't mine as fast or collect as much as him, but she was still his toughest rival since Terran Jr. One day, while they were busy mining, Fula asked Hiel if he had ever had a father. Hiel paused, then gave a sad look and said softly, "I did." Fula believed his father must have been a great man, but the pain on Hiel's face told a different story. No matter how far he was from them, he was still scared because they were the real monsters. They had strong powers and showed no mercy. When he asked Fula if she wanted to be as strong as Elven, she said no, but it was clear she actually did. He quietly laughed while she struck a wall hard. The impact showed there was empty space behind it, which she hoped was a cave with a change stone. The room they found this time was much bigger, but it still had the same detailed carvings. There were also empty spots where strange statues stood still. As soon as he realized something was wrong, he shouted for Fula to stop, but it was already too late. One of the statues started moving toward her, its eyes glowing. Hiel quickly made a shield using magic to block the fire blast it shot. After making sure Fula was safe, he noticed something else. Unlike the golems he made before, these ones could use magic too. One even attacked with a sword. As he focused on one, 4 others surrounded him. Not bothered by the numbers, he crossed his arms and cast a storm spell that pushed them all away. His magic was so strong that the heavy golems were thrown against the walls. Fula stammered an apology for waking them up, but Hiel forgave her because even he hadn't expected such strong golems. Now, they were gone because of his magic. Shell quickly ran off to warn the others to stop mining for now and avoid more dangerous surprises like this. While waiting, Fula found a gem and excitedly asked if it was a change stone. Sadly for her, Hiel said it was a sorcery stone, which could store magic and might be used to make a doll. She felt a bit disappointed. That was until Mappa suddenly showed up from the shadows, quiet and smooth like a sneaky thief. While the two shouted in surprise at his sudden arrival, Mappa walked past them, picked up the huge sword that had belonged to the fallen golems, and started dancing while whistling a cheerful tune. He happily made his way out through the entrance and disappeared from their sight. Fula was confused, wondering if all humans were crazy and naked like Mappa, but Hiel firmly denied it. Instead, he pointed out how happy Mappa looked for once. He wondered if the sword had something to do with it. When he tried to pick one up, it wouldn't move at all. Even with both of them trying together, the giant sword didn't budge. Hiel used his brain and tried to store it directly in his inventory, but the system advisor told him that he could only collect things he had mined himself. He was a bit disappointed that he couldn't take any crafted items. He thought about breaking the sword apart, but even his Cave King crest, he couldn't damage it. Hiel didn't give up. On his next strike, the sword finally broke, but so did his pickaxe. He was a little sad that Mappa's special axe was destroyed. However, the pieces of the sword turned out to be made of orichalcum, a legendary metal known for being strong and full of magic. Hiel was confused again because the description said the metal was supposed to be light, but he still couldn't lift it. The scene changed to Elvan, who was now trying to lift the same sword Mappa had brought. Raina noticed Hiel, Ful, and Shell coming out of a nearby cave. She explained that everyone had taken turns trying to lift the sword, and now it was Elvan's turn. Hiel then revealed that the sword was made from 300 orichalcum ingots. Fula rushed to stop her father, begging him not to try something so dangerous. But with a loud roar, Elvan managed to lift the sword onto his shoulders. The crowd cheered as they saw the crest of the warrior glowing on his shoulder, which explained his sudden strength. However, before he could celebrate, his grip slipped. The sword's weight caused him to fall and he hit his head hard on the ground. The crowd gasped as he lay still, and Hiel quickly ran to cast a healing spell on him. Hiel told Elvan not to try such risky things again, but then Fula crashed into Hiel's stomach, making things worse. Elvan became very worried when he saw his daughter shaking. She started crying and blamed him for making her so scared. Elvan and Raina smiled gently as he apologized and gave Fula a big hug. From the corner of his eye, Hiel saw Mappa quietly walking away with the huge sword. He had thrown it into a forge, and the orichalcum was melting under the intense heat. Dwarves were noble beings who loved working with rare metals. With their incredible physical strength, mysterious techniques, and noble spirits, they were known far and wide. When Hiel watched Mappa work so seriously with the orichalcum, he finally believed that Mappa was a true dwarf. Mappa handed his finished work to Hiel, and as soon as Hiel held it, he was amazed. The pickaxe Mappa made felt extremely light, just like it was described before. After smelting all the orichalcum, Mappa went on to make many different tools. There was no doubt now, he truly was a real dwarf. But Hiel still wasn't sure why he always worked without any clothes on. A loud crash followed the scene as Elvin's axe bounced off something surprisingly strong. Instead of feeling fear, the great warrior felt thrilled. He dropped his twin axes, clapped his hands together, and got ready to fight the enemy with just his fists. Meanwhile, deep inside the mines, Fule took a deep breath and confirmed that the air was safe. On Fulis's advice, they had created a small air hole. Mappa added a complex tidal-powered fan to help push fresh air inside. Even though they were excited to start mining, they decided to wait until the whole cave was properly filled with clean air. Later, the team agreed to spend the day at the forge. Hiel, on the other hand, began planting a few golems. He used 14 artificial hearts and 10 magic stones he had recovered from broken golems to build new guard golems. Ma worked on equipment nearby. His drawing stick kept moving, guided by his thoughts, and before he realized it, he had gotten carried away. In front of him was a sketch of a golem filled with all sorts of weapons. With a silly look on his face, he kept adding details like a kid playing with a new toy. Suddenly he jumped. Raina had silently appeared behind him and was looking at his drawing. Embarrassed, he quickly tried to erase it. She then asked if he had time to spare. When he asked why, she simply said it would be more fun if he saw it himself. With a teasing smile, she led him through a neat storage room full of sunstones. When they reached the plantation area, Hiel's mouth dropped open. The once barren coast had turned into a lush garden filled with plants. He saw apples, grapes, lemons, and even palm trees growing there. Impressed, he praised Raina for turning the place into a beautiful orchard. She explained that there wasn't enough fruit yet for everyone, but as he watched, she suddenly took a stance in front of a palm tree. With a loud shout, she punched the trunk. A few coconuts fell from above. Then, with a sharp kick, she sliced off the tops and caught them mid-air. To the coconut water, she added lemon juice and some ice to chill it. She poured the mix into jars, then served it in simple wooden cups. There was enough for everyone to have a share. As Hiel took a sip, he couldn't help but wonder how she had grown so strong. But once he tasted the drink, all he could think about was how refreshing it was. It was sweet, cool, and perfectly sour. Raina's eyes lit up as she heard his praise. Just then, Hiel heard Elvin's voice in the distance. Elvin was with Varys and several others. He was carrying something huge on his shoulders. When Hiel asked what it was, he also mentioned he was ready to restart mining. However, he couldn't ignore the strange, shell-like object Elvin had brought. Elvin proudly explained that it was the shell of a creature called a Satan shell, which he had just defeated at the back shore of the island. He showed off its tough body, saying it was so strong that even his axe couldn't leave a proper dent. When Hiel asked how he managed to beat it, Elvin said he simply forced it open, something only possible because of his incredible strength. As they opened the shell, Varys poured a strange organ into a tub. It released a thick, odd-looking liquid. Mappa, curious, dipped his finger in and gave it a lick. Right away, he fell onto his back and started shaking. With a mischievous grin, Varys said the liquid could be poisonous depending on how it was treated. But then he admitted it was just a joke. The only thing extracted from it was purple dye. Still, Hiel cast a recovery spell on Mappa just in case. From killer birds to Satan shells and even ancient golems, their enemies kept growing in number. To prepare, Hiel created an entire group of 14 new golems. Half of them were much larger than the others. Including his very first creation, there were 15 golems in total. 10 of them, numbers 6 through 15, were powered by magic stones. 2 of these used defensive magic. The rest were split among the 4 elements. 2 used ice, 2 fire, 2 lightning, and 2 wind magic. Hiel then noticed some goblins in a panic ringing the emergency bell from atop the defensive wall. They shouted that many Satan shells were invading from the one side where the walls hadn't been finished yet. When Hiel and the others rushed over, they saw more than 50 of those tough, spiky creatures climbing up the walls. Hiel asked Varys for details, and Varys said Satan shells could resist heat and cold but not lightning. Hiel wanted to test his new golems and asked Elvin to let him handle it. Elvin agreed but told him to call for help right away if things got bad. Hiel then asked Raina if she could use lightning magic. She said yes. They both climbed onto golem number 1, which lifted them with its arms and joined hands. From there, Hiel took command of his golem army. The Satan shells had already climbed over the wall by the time the group arrived. As the creatures charged at them, Hiel quickly ordered the 2 defensive golems to protect them. Golem number 6 and 7 followed without hesitation. Lightning flashed as Raina called down a thunderbolt, hitting the crawling monsters hard. The golems acted like moving shields for Elvin and Varys, while Hiel controlled their actions. 2 more golems, numbers 14 and 15, joined the fight. They were powered by lightning magic, and their attacks caused heavy damage. The Satan shells froze for a moment, then fought back by spraying a special liquid that could paralyze anyone it touched. The golems continued to defend the group without slowing down. From the top of golem number 1, Raina didn't waste any time or energy. She kept electrocuting the enemies, and thanks to the 2 golems guarding them, the team didn't take any serious damage. With everyone attacking together, the Satan shells were defeated quickly. Not wanting to waste the defeated creatures, Raina told the golems to carry them to the freezer, following Hiel's orders. All 15 golems began picking up the spiky creatures. Suddenly, Raina noticed one of the Satan shells was still moving. It was about to attack Hiel, who hadn't seen it. She jumped in front of him and took the hit herself. The poison made it hard for her to move. A clean strike from Elven killed the creature. Hiel, now safe, turned to thank Raina, only to see her lying on top of him covered in the poison. Embarrassed, he quickly used a healing spell on her and moved away. When he looked again, he was even more embarrassed to see her still sticky from the attack. He rushed off to get water to help clean her. On the way back, something shiny caught his eye inside one of the Satan shells. Looking closer, he found a pearl. A very rare discovery. Raina was amazed by how pretty it looked. Since Hiel didn't know what to do with it, he offered it to her as a gift. He explained that he didn't know its value, but Raina turned red and began stuttering. Flustered, she apologized and gave the pearl back before running away, claiming she couldn't yet. Hiel, left holding the pearl, had no idea why she rejected it. After spending the whole next day mining, Hiel told the other miners to take a break, but Fuller asked to keep working a bit longer. Seeing how serious she was, Hiel reminded her to at least eat on time. She agreed right away, since Raina's cooking was just too good to skip. Hiel left Golem number 1 to watch over things and report if anything went wrong. Fuller had a strong passion for mining, and with the golem there to help, their work became even more efficient. The day before, they had beaten many Satan shells, so their meals were mostly made from those spiky creatures. Mappa also started piling food on plates like never before. It seemed like the Satan shells had made their home nearby since they kept showing up on the shore. This turned into a steady supply of food, tough shells, and dye. Other things kept washing up on the shore from time to time, but what came next wasn't just blessings. At the start of the next day, Hiel saw the true beauty of a dye called Tyrian purple for the first time. Under Varys's guidance, a few goblins who worked with cloth made it using liquid taken from Satan shells. The quality was better than anything Hiel had ever seen. As they admired the color, they saw Elven walking toward them. They called him over to see it too. But something was wrong. Elven, who was usually cheerful, looked serious and didn't say a word. With a clenched fist, he asked Hiel to follow him to the coastline. His voice was firm and heavy. When they arrived, a crowd had already gathered near the edge. Lying there was a body, one that didn't look like a goblin. It had more defined muscles and tusks. It was an orc. Many of them stepped back, afraid. Elven explained that the orc had been caught in the embankment and pulled out of the water. But his voice now showed anger and disgust. The seal on the orc's clothes revealed that it belonged to the same tribe that had destroyed the Belden tribe's hometown. The goblins were scared, but one of them started kicking the orc's body in anger. The others quickly joined in. Elven asked them to stop, but they didn't listen. When Hiel looked to Elven and Varys for help, they stayed silent. Hiel knew he couldn't step in. The orcs were the sworn enemies of the Belden tribe, but someone else could and did. The princess of the Belden tribe stepped in herself, furious at the goblins' actions. She asked if their tribe had fallen so low that they would dishonor the dead. The goblins tried to defend themselves. They reminded her that these orcs had killed their friends and families. They even spoke of how the orcs had pinned her father, their king, to a wall with swords as a warning. Raina could feel their anger and fear, but she knew they couldn't let it control them. She said that since Hiel was the master of the island, only he could decide what would happen to anything or anyone that arrived there. Then, to show respect, Raina knelt before him and apologized on behalf of the goblins. Although he wasn't sure of himself, Hiel quietly thanked Raina. He walked forward, trying to stay strong as the leader of the island and the one responsible for his people. Standing in front of them, he admitted that their anger made sense, but he didn't want them to insult the dead. He bowed deeply and asked them to listen to a selfish request, to control their emotions. The goblins were shocked to see their master bow. They quickly begged him not to do so. Hiel then asked Varys to take care of the orc's burial. But as he looked into the distance, he noticed something troubling. It wasn't just one body. The riverbank in front of them was filled with corpses. One by one, they pulled in a total of 24 bodies. And they weren't only orcs. Among them were dog-like, two-legged creatures called kobolds, who were also longtime enemies of the goblins. With so many dead and injured, Hiel wondered if some kind of fight had broken out between them. Varys, on the other hand, questioned how they had even ended up in such a faraway place. Elven called for Hiel, and the two stepped away from the crowd. He explained that while everyone had wounds from battle, some of them had very strange and frightening injuries. Elven said these marks weren't caused by axes or swords, but by huge fangs, bigger than anything he had ever seen. One body was even worse. Half of it looked like it had been burned away by intense heat, hotter than anything fire magic could create. This made it clear to Elvin that they hadn't died from fighting each other. They were attacked by something much stronger. He didn't want to make any final guesses yet, but he knew they had to stay alert and watch out for armed ships. Elvin told Varys to handle the burials, while Elan and Raina were assigned to check and strengthen their defenses. Elvin searched through the wreckage for anything useful. Even though it felt wrong to go through the belongings of the dead, they didn't have much of a choice. Most of the items were either badly damaged or needed fixing. While doing this, Hiel suddenly heard a strange whimper. He looked around and asked Raina to help check, but they didn't see anything that could have made the sound. Then it happened again, this time coming from a crate that was shaking among the rubble. Raina tried to open it but couldn't. Hiel noticed that the crate was sealed with a magic lock. He used a spell to unlock it, and after a moment the seal broke. As he leaned in to check the inside, something fast jumped out and hit his face. He caught it just in time and saw that it was a small, white, fluffy puppy. The puppy squirmed and escaped from his hands. It climbed onto his head, then ran across his back as he tried to grab it again. The puppy finally stopped when it clung to the back of his head, and then started to shake. Hiel let out a noise when something wet ran down his back. The puppy had peed on his shirt. Raina laughed softly and gently picked it up. Hiel later realized that the little creature was a kobold child. Raina stroked it kindly. Even though kobolds were their enemies, she believed that children weren't to blame for anything. She hoped the others would feel the same. The next day when Hiel returned to the mine, a loud explosion sent rubble flying everywhere. Each day Mappa's equipment kept getting stronger, which made mining more dangerous. Hiel didn't know how to fight, nor did he understand what kind of enemy they were facing this time. So the best thing he could do was to keep mining. The materials he collected were needed to help protect the island. However, the number of magic stones he found started to drop. He still had enough for himself, but if he wanted to help increase Riena's magic power, or support the evolved Fully and Varys someday, he would definitely need more. While checking his inventory, Hiel noticed a strange item shaped like a walnut. It didn't have a name, and even Mr. Advisor couldn't identify it, which confused Hiel. When he took it outside, he was surprised to learn it wasn't a stone at all. It was actually a seed. Just then, Fulla ran toward him and asked him to follow her. Something was happening on the surface. General Elvin was trying to calm a crying puppy, but his serious expression only made things worse. Despite help from Spider Mama Terran and Mappa dancing with maracas, nothing worked. The child kept crying. Fulla suddenly kicked Elvin in the back, realizing that his face was scaring the puppy even more. It reminded Elvin of a time when he had scared Full in the same way when she was little. Hiel walked up and gently asked Elvin to ease up. The puppy immediately stopped crying when it saw Hiel. It jumped off its bed, ran toward him, and climbed onto his face, happily licking him. Its tail wagged with excitement. Fully could tell the puppy had been waiting to see Hiel ever since it woke up. Raina, in her own way, added that the puppy might see Hiel as its parent. It even peed on him to prove the point. Varys explained that kobolds naturally bond strongly with others, like imprinting. Curious about the box Varys was working on, Hiel asked if there was anything inside. They soon discovered that the box had a hidden bottom that couldn't even be scratched with an orichalcum knife. Hiel handed the puppy to Raina and tried to break the seal again. This time it worked. The bottom of the box opened. Inside, they found a strange white diamond-shaped stone and 3 books. Each book was about the Idrasil tribe, one on their history, another on their techniques, and the last one on their sacred writings. Hiel started to wonder if the little puppy was from the Idrasil tribe too. Mr. Advisor identified the stone as a thought stone, something that could store thoughts. Elvin and Raina were confused but curious. Varys, however, looked serious and stayed silent. Before Hiel could ask anything, the thought stone in his hand began to glow brightly. The light only grew stronger. As he placed it on a table, the glowing thoughts took shape. Like a projector, the stone showed a hologram of a female kobold holding a staff. She had a strong presence, and it was clear she came from a noble family. Raina was stunned by her beauty. Then the hologram began to speak. The female kobold thanked them for opening the sealed chest. She introduced herself as Alamina, queen of the Idrasil tribe of kobolds. The puppy inside the box, she said, was her newborn child. Elvin recognized the name Idrasil and immediately felt uneasy, but things only became worse. Alhemina explained that her people were being chased by a creature from legend, the Leviathan. After being separated from the Orcs during a chaotic event, they had fled to the sea, but even there the Leviathan followed them. Their weapons and magic were useless against it. Knowing her request might be too much, the queen asked anyone who found the message to raise her child as their own. To help with this, she had sent 2 strong warriors from her tribe to guard the chest, along with 3 books that outsiders were not allowed to read. Suddenly, panicked voices echoed through the hologram. People were begging the queen to escape. The image of Alhemina started to flicker, showing that her end was near. Before the message ended, she softly asked that her child be allowed to hear her final words. She looked at the hologram with a warm smile and said she would always love him. Then the thought stone went dark. The room fell silent. Pity and fear filled the air. Elvin only clicked his tongue. He scoffed at the Idrasil tribe for leaving their child to strangers. He pointed out that even the escorts they promised were missing. Raina quickly spoke up, warning him to be more careful with his words. But Elvin said nothing more. He turned and walked away to inform the others on guard. Hiel guessed that the Belden already knew about the Idrasil tribe and didn't get along with them. Fulla, looking downcast, shared that they had been in constant wars over land. During one of those wars, her older brother and Elvin's first child had died. Hiel understood why the general felt bitter and couldn't trust easily, but he also respected the fact that Elvin didn't hold anything against the child. Fulla made it clear that no matter how harsh a warrior her father was, he would never hate a child. Varys then explained that Elvin blamed himself for not being able to protect his son. Varys also shared that he had lost his younger brother to the Idrasil, yet he felt no hatred toward their small friend. Hiel then announced that he would take the child in as his own. No one disagreed, especially because the child's cuteness made it hard to say no. Still, Hiel had one concern. The child didn't have a name. Raina guessed that Alhamina might have done that on purpose, hoping the new parents would name him themselves. When Hiel asked her if she had any ideas, she gave it some thought and suggested the name Real. Everyone agreed right away, and the child was named without any fuss. After the naming, Mr. Advisor officially recognized Riel as a tamed monster. That wasn't exactly what Hiel had in mind, but it didn't matter. Riel was going to live with them anyway. Fulla soon noticed something funny. Raina had taken the Re from her own name and the L from Hiel to create the name Riel. When everyone found out, Raina got flustered and the group laughed. But the mood quickly changed when Varys reminded Hiel of the serious threat they faced. Based on what Elvin had said about the deep wounds made by fangs, there was no doubt now. The Leviathan would soon be coming for them. The next morning, Hiel went with Mappa and the other blacksmiths to a quiet corner of the island. With Mappa's confirmation, he fired several bursts of flames at something while everyone watched from a safe distance. When the powerful flames faded, a shield made of orichalcum was left completely unscathed. One of the defensive golems had been holding it. The shield was already strong, but they also added a defensive spell to make it even better. Meanwhile, Elvin and Varys felt confident about the large weapons Mappa had built. These were made to fight off bigger enemies. Although they weren't sure if the threat was really coming, they still prepared for the worst. After all, anything strong enough to beat Alamina, known as a witch for her powerful magic and warriors, had to be extremely dangerous. The unknown enemy seemed as threatening as a Leviathan. Just then, Riel climbed onto a wooden post. It started yapping loudly. When the others heard it, they could sense fear in its voice. The creature soon began to whine, clearly unable to climb back down. Elvin, feeling worried, decided to help. As he climbed the post, Riel used Elvin's head like a stepping stone and jumped down. Right after, Elvin fell down. Raina ran over and gently scolded Riel for causing trouble. Elvin asked how the creature even got there since Raina had taken him to the fields. She explained that Riel was very playful. He would dig up seeds, eat other people's lunches, or chase butterflies. Varys commented that it wouldn't be surprising to see Riel walking on 2 legs soon, as kobold children grew up fast. Before Hiel could say anything, the word field reminded him of something. He quickly took out a strange seed from his inventory. Varys was confused but curious about its large size. Raina suddenly shouted a name, Idrasil. Both Hiel and Varys were shocked by how quickly she said it. Even Raina didn't understand where that word came from. They guessed that her farmer crest might have given her special knowledge about plants. The word Yggdrasil reminded Varys of an old story. According to legend, Yggdrasil was a giant tree that gave blessings to all living things. Since they had already found other rare items like the Change Stone, Varys didn't want to ignore the possibility that the story might be true. Not long after, the quiet part of the island was finally reached by Hiel. This time, he had dug a tunnel all the way through the Shiol Reef. It was something they needed to do, and also a chance to expand. They were once planning to turn the reclaimed land into a farming area. After everything that had happened recently, the area had turned into a kind of defensive base. Hiel had enough materials to take over the new shoreline too. But since his retrieval ability only worked inside the cave, he asked Taryn and the Fluffy kids to help carry the dirt back in. He had done something similar before, so this time it was easier. Soon, he turned the rough rocky shore into a working port. While Hiel worked on planting Idrasil, Raina added some flower seeds from her hometown to make the place look nicer. Hiel thanked her for the kind act. Just then, Mappa quietly walked over and crouched near the spot where the special seed had been planted. Raina looked surprised when they saw that the seed had already sprouted. When Hiel asked, Raina said she hadn't used the sunstone, which could have helped it grow faster. Mappa shook his head too, saying he hadn't done anything. Still unsure, Hiel asked Raina to use the sunstone this time. As soon as the sunstone released its energy, the small sprout turned into a medium-sized plant. It gave off a strange feeling as it kept growing, but to Hiel's shock, it didn't stop there. The small branches quickly became huge, stretching out and covering the sky above them. The tree kept growing fast, and before they knew it, it became dangerous. The group started running away. Hiel held Mappa tightly, but Mappa tripped on one of the fast-growing roots. The roots wrapped around him and he disappeared into the thick plants. They all shouted for him, but a sudden blast from the roots threw them back just in time to avoid being trapped too. Even from the far side of the island, everyone could see the giant tree towering over everything. It was even taller than the reef itself. The tiny seed Hiel had once held was gone, lost in the thick leaves and branches. The tree, now fully grown, stood high and proud. Yggdrasil had come to life, living up to its name as the legendary tree. Worried about their legendary blacksmith, Hiel rushed toward the tree when Raina noticed Mappa's hand slowly sticking out from the branches. Carefully, they began to climb the tree, treating it like a steep mountain. As they got closer, they saw that Mappa had managed to keep his head above the surface so he could breathe. But before they could help him, they realized the hand wasn't asking for help. It was gently telling them to let him stay. He seemed comfortable inside the Tree of Blessings. Mappa gave a small nod, showing he wanted to rest there a little longer. Raina noticed the fresh scent of the forest all around them, flowing through the tree like veins. Hiel and Raina also sensed a strong energy inside. It felt like a divine force slowly spreading across the island. They both knew this tree called Yggdrasil was full of secrets, ones they would leave for Varys to uncover later. Little Riel ran ahead with excitement. As Hiel tried to call him back, Raina suggested they explore the paradise a bit more. Surrounded by soft winds and green leaves, she felt like she had returned to a place from her past and wanted to enjoy it for a while longer. Riel gave a cheerful bark and Hiel couldn't say no. They watched the small child dash forward while Raina followed with strong, graceful leaps. Along the way, she helped heal small wounds and guided them upward. When they finally reached the highest branches, the view of the island below took their breath away. It was stunning. They stood there, enjoying the peaceful moment together. But as Hiel looked out toward the sea, he narrowed his eyes. He couldn't see any ships, especially ones that might bring danger from his kingdom. Raina noticed an uncomfortable silence come over Hiel. Although a bit unsure, she gently asked how he ended up alone on the island. When he didn't respond for a while, Raina apologized, thinking she had asked something she shouldn't have. Hiel sat down on a tree stump and let out a sigh. He hadn't talked about his past until now. Raina and Little Riel quietly sat across from him, waiting. Finally, Hiel shared that he had been expelled from his kingdom because he was seen as too weak. Raina was shocked, especially after witnessing the amazing things he had done so far. But she didn't yet know how painful his past truly was. Back in the royal capital, Hiel often visited a forgotten part of the palace, the old servants' quarters. It was a quiet, abandoned place. He went there whenever he had time to read. Even though it was lonely, it felt better than facing the harsh looks from people in the palace who hated his weakness. One day, while exploring, he heard a small noise coming from behind an old barrel. When he peeked past it, he found a small creature, an imp, with horns and tiny wings, screaming at him. Hiel was shocked to find a monster hiding in the capital. He tried to back away, but the creature jumped at him. He raised his arms to protect himself, but the attack never came. The imp was chained to a thick post. It was badly hurt and bleeding. Setting his book aside, Hiel slowly reached out. He wondered if he could use magic to heal it, but sadly he didn't know how. Over the next few days, he kept coming back. He brought food from the castle and did his best to free the chains around its neck, though he always failed. Despite this, he looked forward to every visit. The imp, whom he named Lopez, became his only friend. Spending time with Lopez made Hiel feel more human, more alive. Even though he wasn't good at anything, he tried learning magic, hoping to one day help Lopez escape. The creature was still dirty and wounded, but Hiel gently patted his head, holding on to the promise that he would set him free. One day, laughter echoed through the abandoned quarters, an area where no one was supposed to be. Hiel froze. Voices followed, and it was clear more than one person was coming. He quickly hid behind a corner. Lopez also tried to hide behind the post. From the edge of his vision, Hiel recognized someone. The person had golden hair, pale skin, and a face that looked almost like a girl's. It was Oren, the 18th Prince of Sanfales and Hiel's younger brother. Oren loudly remarked in surprise that the weak little creature was still alive. A small tornado spun toward Lopez. He noticed it and tried to run, but the chains held him back. Oren, the one behind it, called out about how important it was to practice being accurate. He was joined by several proud students from noble families. Together, they used Lopez as a target for their magic training. Spell after spell flew at Lopez. He tried to hide or find a safe place, but the attacks didn't stop. The students, along with some top members of the Magic Academy, kept casting magic on him. Oren led the assault, hurting Lopez just enough to keep him alive. Around the corner, Hiel watched in fear. He was too weak to stop them, but thinking about the pain his friend must be feeling, he decided to act. He ran toward Lopez, calling his name and apologizing. Even though he had tried his best to care for the young boy the past few days, his magic wasn't strong enough to heal even small wounds. Things were getting worse. If this kept going and if Hiel couldn't heal him or break the chains, Lopez would die. Orin and the others were surprised when Hiel showed up. Lopez, hurt and scared, moved behind him, shaking with fear. Hiel asked Orin for a favor. Holding up the hand with his useless magic mark, he begged him to let the boy go. Orin gave him a cold look. Then he raised his hand and one of his friends handed him a pair of white gloves. Hiel heard the sound of footsteps as Orin walked closer. He was too scared to look up. Orin slapped Hiel hard with his gloved hand and looked at him with disgust. He was angry that Hiel, despite being royalty, begged to free a monster. Orin raised his hand again and cast a strong fire spell, warning Hiel to move aside or be burned along with his powerless friend. Even without magic, Hiel could sense the danger in the spell. He dropped to the ground, placed his head low, and begged Orin to stop. Orin pulled back the spell, looking disappointed. Then, to Hiel's surprise, Orin agreed to let it go, saying he was tired of how things were done anyway. Hiel quickly turned to Lopez, smiling with relief. But his joy turned into shock when Orin ordered him to break the seal that was holding his friend. Confused, Hiel looked up. Orin told him that with his permission, Hiel was free to do what he wanted, even release Lopez. But Orin's eyes turned cold. He said that, unlike Hiel, he couldn't allow a monster to run wild in the capital. He gave Hiel 10 seconds. Before Hiel could speak or do anything, Orin had already started counting down. By the time Hiel understood what was happening, only 8 seconds were left. Panicking, Hiel tried to break the seal. People around them watched, entertained by his struggle. Lopez saw Hiel's desperate face and gave him one last smile. He seemed to know his life was about to end. As the countdown hit 0, Orin smiled. In the next moment, Hiel found himself staring at the burned body of his friend. Smoke filled the air. Hiel hoped just for a moment that Lopez might have survived, but there was no smile waiting for him. Lopez was gone. Orin walked away, sighing at how useless Hiel had been. Hiel realized then that Orin had planned it all from the start. Filled with grief and rage, Hiel tried to punch him, but a magic shield blocked the attack before it could land. The pain of losing Lopez wouldn't go away, but Orin, still in a cold voice, asked if Hiel really thought he could touch him. When Orin turned around, his blood-red eyes sent a wave of fear through Hiel's heart. After that, Hiel ended up in the medical ward. But somehow he still managed to walk back to that horrible place. He gathered the small amount of ashes that were left of his friend and placed them in a vial that had been hanging from his neck the whole time. Holding it tightly, the pain hit him again. He blamed himself for being foolish enough to promise his friend freedom when he couldn't even save him as he died right in front of him. But unlike what Hiel thought of himself, Raina didn't see him as powerless. Whether it was helping the Belden tribe, Riel, or even Lopez, she knew that Hiel had always done his best to help others. His sad past deeply affected her. When he handed her a handkerchief, he wondered to himself why he had shared such a sad story. He questioned if it was because he just wanted someone to listen. But when he saw Raina's kind smile and heard Riel's joyful bark, he realized he was wrong. He had simply wanted to tell Raina specifically. Together, they walked deeper into the heart of Yggdrasil, where another surprise waited for them. A wide meadow filled with white flowers and soft green grass. Raina felt proud that the flowers from her hometown made the place even more beautiful. Riel ran happily through the petals, barking and wagging his tail. Understanding how important Lopez was to Hiel, Raina gently said that even if he couldn't erase his regrets, he should remember that he wasn't alone. Hiel now had people who cared about him. He had a family to lean on, the cheerful group running through the field. As Raina gave him a soft smile, Hiel felt some of the pain in his heart ease. He quietly thanked her with all his heart. After Varys carefully studied it, they discovered that Yggdrasil's sap made a great sweetener. Its leaves could be used to make salves or regular tea. However, they had to be careful. Eating too much could cause someone to pass out. The branches were surprisingly light but strong, making them perfect for holding the orichalcum tools they made. Mappa quickly crafted several pickaxe handles from them. But that wasn't the only surprise. When Hiel called for a break later, Full quietly said she wasn't tired at all. They soon realized the tree also helped reduce fatigue. The legendary tree became a real gift for everyone living in Shiol Reef. Day by day, their lives slowly got better. One night, when Hiel was sleeping peaceful, a sharp, loud sound suddenly woke him up. He woke up to find Riel crying in his sleep. Hiel gently rubbed his back to calm him. Moments later, the others who heard the crying rushed into the room. Raina tried to comfort Riel, softly running her hands through his fur. Hiel sat up quickly when he noticed something strange. Riel's left eye was glowing. When he looked closer, he was shocked to see a rough outline of a crest forming. Then, the eye burst with a bright light, filling the entire room. They all covered their eyes, but as their vision adjusted, something unexpected happened. Suddenly, they saw a violent sea. Waves crashed hard and a broken ship groaned in the storm. Kobold bodies floated lifeless in the water. Then a crescent-shaped staff rose into view. Alamina, the queen of the Tiberus kobolds, appeared and cast a large shield spell in front of her. but a powerful blast of energy smashed through it, destroying her hand and the staff in a flash. She gave one last look at her baby and cast a spell to lock him away safely. A giant serpent appeared in the mist. With no magic left, she leapt at it using only her claws in a final hopeless attempt to protect her child. Everyone who saw the vision fell to the floor, shaken by the terrible scene. They all realized they had shared a vision with Hiel. Just seeing the serpent left fear in their hearts. As little Hiel whimpered from what he had seen, Hiel braced himself again. There was no doubt now. The mythical Leviathan was truly coming for them. When Varys saw Hiel's crest, he recognized it as the crest of Clairvoyance. He didn't know much about how it worked, but he had heard it was known as the all-seeing eye of God. If that was true, then what they had just witnessed was Hiel's clairvoyant vision, a memory from when he said goodbye to his mother. That vision had been shared with everyone on the island. Terrified by the image of the Leviathan, people rushed out of their rooms. They couldn't believe such a monster existed. In fear, they begged their leader Hiel to do something. But the problem was too big for Hiel to handle right away. With so many people depending on him, he couldn't afford to give them false hope. The panic was growing stronger by the minute. Suddenly, a loud roar made everyone go quiet. Elvin stepped up and took control. Frustrated by the panic in his tribe, he reminded them that they had already faced and survived the impossible before. If they stood together and followed their leader, there was nothing they couldn't face. After clearing up the confusion and showing support for Hiel, he stood with Raina, Varys, and even little Hiel. Hiel took a deep breath and told everyone that even if they couldn't defeat the Leviathan, they were bound to face it eventually. So they had to prepare. He asked for their strength because with everyone working together, they just might have a chance. The dark clouds that formed the day before brought rain the next morning, making their situation even worse. Even though Hiel had motivated his group, he quickly gave up on using attack magic, especially after the powerful witch Alamena had already failed. When he asked if their orichalcum weapons might help, Mappa grew anxious and said it was impossible too. Varys was quiet at first, but then he spoke up and shared one small hope. Because the Leviathan was so massive, it wouldn't be able to reach the lowest part of the cave they were in. With that in mind, they decided to use the chamber where the ancient golems were found as a shelter for the refugees. A second freezer would also be built nearby to store supplies. There was still the danger that the giant sea serpent might destroy the island itself instead of trying to enter the cave, which Elvin feared. But Hiel had a plan. Along with the Terran family, Fula and Shell, he headed to the deepest part of the mining caverns. He was ready to rely on what he did best, mining. Since the island had grown a lot since they first arrived, he believed they might find new materials underground. They had already discovered many strange items on the Shiol Reef, and Hiel hoped they might find something strong enough to fight the Leviathan. Hiel couldn't promise success, but the others believed in him. Raina suggested he bring little Hiel along. The boy smiled when he heard his name. Raina explained that, even if Hiel couldn't control his clairvoyance yet, it might help them at the right moment. Hiel eagerly climbed into Hiel's backpack, but when they checked on him, there was no response. They opened the bag and found Hiel fast asleep, no longer as excited as before. Hiel laughed, while the rest of the team got ready to dig. The entire island worked together on their plan to stop the Leviathan. Thanks to the thick lumber around the Yggdrasil, they had enough wood to build stronger defenses and add new walls on top of the old ones. Suddenly, Hiel woke up and squirmed to get out of Hiel's backpack. Seeing his urgency, Hiel wondered if Hiel had sensed something underground. But Hiel just needed to pee. Hiel could be a bit moody when it came to working, but his clairvoyance helped them see through solid rock. He often led them to regular ores, but during the first week of digging, they didn't find anything new. A few weeks later, Hiel was desperately digging at the ground with his small paws. The others noticed, but there was a big problem. Their tools and maps didn't show anything in that spot. Digging there could cause their section or even the whole cave collapse. Still, little Hiel kept going. Hiel decided to trust Hiel and give it a try. He made one careful strike. That single hit caused the ground to collapse, taking Hiel with it. Fula shouted in fear as he fell. Luckily, Hiel landed on a smooth rock ledge that wasn't too far down. It didn't hurt. He looked around and saw a new cave hidden below. As his eyes adjusted to the dark, he was shocked. Right in front of him lay a huge Artmore, with a sword much taller than the armor itself. There was a hole in the chest where a heartstone should have been, which meant it was once a golem. Fula grew nervous, remembering their past encounter with golems. Hiel looked closely and noticed something. The armor was made of orichalcum, but the giant sword had a silver color, showing it was even rarer. Curious, Hiel hit the sword with his pickaxe. The impact sent strong vibrations through the cave, up the stairs, and all the way to the forge until it reached someone's ears. Before Hiel could react, Mappa appeared behind him, out of breath. They were surprised by how fast he arrived, but what shocked them more was how Mappa acted. His eyes widened as he saw the sword. Then he dropped to his knees, then all fours, as if bowing to something sacred. While everyone watched in confusion, Mappa kept bowing again and again. Then, without a word, he picked up the sword and rushed out of the cave. It was clear he urgently needed to take it to the workshop, so they followed close behind. Shortly after, the forge burned brightly as the blacksmiths added more coal to keep the fire going. Several machines were working, and Mappa moved around wildly, trying to get the blacksmith's attention. They figured out that he was upset about the fire not being hot enough to melt the sword. Raina walked up to them, curious about the sudden noise. When Hiel saw her, he suddenly understood what Mappa was trying to say. Tarab had already set up 2 hammocks with his webs across the ceiling, and in the middle of the room was the crucible they had all been worried about. Hiel and Raina planned to increase the furnace's heat using their magic. Once the right temperature was reached, the others slowly lowered the sword into the center of the flames. Mappa kept a close eye on the process as the metal melted and flowed out of the furnace through a duct. He took a part of the metal to work with, while the rest was turned into ingots. When Hiel took a small sample, Mr. Advisor said it was Mithril, the hardest metal known, strong enough to kill gods. He suggested the gods might have once owned it and were now paying the price for losing it. Hiel was shocked by the discovery. For the first time, they might actually have a chance, and it was all thanks to little Riel. With Mappa's skill, they could now try to create their strongest weapon. A few weeks later, the defensive wall was finished too, making their island look more like a fortress. They knew it still wasn't enough to face a legendary beast, but the Shiol Reef was finally ready for its first great battle. One night, as he was heading back to his quarters, Hiel heard strange sounds coming from his room. When he got closer, he saw Elven speaking with Riel. Before he could ask what was going on, Raina quietly walked up behind him and gently asked him not to interrupt. Little Riel looked up when the general called for him. He apologized for speaking badly about his mother before. As a proud warrior, he now admitted that his mother had been a strong warrior herself after seeing the vision. He rubbed Riel's head and promised to prove it one day by avenging her. Hiel and Raina felt at peace now that things were finally settled. As Elven accepted Riel's promise, the little one playfully pawed at his eye. Elven suddenly screamed in pain holding his eye. It made things a bit awkward, but in the end, everyone felt relieved. A heavy burden had been lifted from their hearts. The next morning, a watchguard suddenly rang the alarm. Recognizing the signal, Hiel rushed out of his room. When he reached the shore, Elven was already there, standing and watching. He didn't react to the warning, even though several ships were heading toward them. Varys handed Hiel a telescope created by Mappa. When Hiel looked through it, he saw a familiar but threatening symbol. The ships belonged to the remaining members of the Orc tribe, the same ones who had destroyed the Belden tribe. Elven had no plans to let them land on the island. As they kept watching, the enemy ships fired several shots into the water. They weren't sure what the Orcs were aiming at. Then Riel suddenly started barking loudly. At that moment, his magical crest activated and a heavy pressure filled the air. Hiel also sensed a huge amount of magic energy. The ocean swelled and everyone stared in shock. A massive wave exploded as one of the Orc ships was torn apart. From beneath the sea, a huge serpent with dark scales rose up. Its roar shook the air, and its body stretched high into the sky. The godlike beast had arrived, and it sent the sea into chaos. That is the end of the recap at Chapter 11. Please read the pinned comment about the next part.